Hello, welcome to part 2 of the Let's Start a Cult podcast. My name is Matt Stevens, and this is...
I'm Kevin Feasy.
And we're going to talk about some rememberings of our second record. Our first record, second recording of our first full album, which is called If It Carries On Like This, We're Moving to Morecambe, which is, in current context, seems wise.
We're in March 2020, if anybody's wondering.
So anyway, so it was called If It Carries On Like This, We're Moving to Morecambe. So we'd recorded the EP and put it onto the internet. So this is the story so far. Put it onto the internet, and more people liked it than we actually expected to like it. So we were at the point of going, we might as well do some more of this. And so as a 3-piece, we one afternoon, I think me and you met up and came up with the riffs for it, didn't we?
We decided. Again, this is my rememberings of it. That we'd gotten together. We did part 1. You know, that was going to be one of your solo projects, but it kind of ended up being this. And then we kind of, because it had worked, we kind of thought, well, you know, let's have a go. So we thought we'd continue the experiment. So I remember talking about it, and the idea wasn't it, that we were going to be very unprepared. So we didn't write any of the tracks fully, did we? We kind of had like riffs, I guess. Riffs, chord progressions, melodies. And I remember we did have a couple of like rehearsals in various different places where we tried some things up. Didn't we?
We met up at that rehearsal place that's underneath those railway arches. Do you remember? Because Steve was rehearsing with his other band, wasn't he? The same night.
That's weirdly. Right. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
What band was that?
I can't remember. I think it might have been 10 Times the Man You'll Ever Be.
So Steve was in another room recording with his band, rehearsing with his band, and we were trying to write the first Fierce and the Dead album. And we basically had a few bits. I remember me and you met up and came up with some riffs, and then we rehearsed the bits.
That's right.
And then we had recording. We had 2 days at the studio, didn't you?
Yeah, I just remember the conversations we had about the writing. I know a lot of the writing was one afternoon round your house where we put some things together. Yeah. I remember things like Flint coming up with a riff for Flint, and you came up with a melody. I can't remember what else we put together. 10 by 10, I think, was there as well.
And I think HR with that ascending chord riff I had.
Yeah.
That's I had those chords because it was a real sort of Mahavishnu orchestra ascending sort of thing.
Yeah.
And did I have the weight as well?
You may well have done.
I had the weight because I think the weight had been written for a solo album. I think because I had all the bits of that, so it was just a question of learning it rather than writing it. So I had all the sort of bits for that.
I remember as well discussing quite a lot of the conceptual ideas.
Yeah, because it was like In a Silent Way I was really into at the time, and we talked about Can, Noi, and people like that, and the sort of the krautrocky sort of thing, weren't it?
To be honest with you, Matt, I think a lot of it was just part 1 had worked.
Yeah.
So this was some kind of hopefully not false bravado. We thought we could do this. We could just turn up. It'll be fine. Let's just barely prepare and see what happens. And it did work. It did work.
And weirdly, we play. Let's have a look at the track list. And we play 1, 2, 3. 4, 5 songs off it live still to this day. We play more songs off this than we did the follow-up, which we thought at the time was a far better album. We play half of this record. I mean, and considering these are songs we sort of improvised at the time, it's bizarre that we still play these songs. It's like Flint, the guitar solo on Flint. I remember with Flint, we had the intro bit was like Multinational Corporations by Napalm Death. It's that with that wash sound at the start, and that melody that comes in, it's kind of that sort of canny, sort of noise, sort of Stone Rosesy sort of thing. Some would see Manchester and Steve Hillage and like a krautrocky sort of thing. And I remember we had that sort of that guitar jangly thing, and you had the bass line, didn't you?
Yes.
But that solo on that was improvised.
It was.
and I still play the bloody thing, and I had to relearn it off the record and go back and play it again, which was bizarre.
Well, this is another interesting point. Well, I think it's interesting, is that
who knows
when we did this, we kind of didn't have any consideration for being able to play it live. So at the time, it was just myself, yourself, Matt, and Stu on drums. Steve was not in the band at that point, and we didn't really hold back on the overdubs. We never it was never, well, we're 3-piece and we can only do this and we can only do that. So you were layering up a lot of the guitar parts, weren't you? Which was coming out of the looping things you'd been doing solo.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff with loops. I think there's stuff on there where I'm playing along on creating loops live, and then playing along with it. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. I was there. I remember it.
Vaguely. I don't.
Well, vaguely remember it. Yeah.
A lot of the times, things disappeared from my memory over the years. But I vaguely remember I remember playing loops live and then and adding it all up and stuff.
We were very lucky, weren't we? Because I was still working as a recording engineer. I had my own studio, but I also did a lot of work at a studio called Livingston Studios up in Wood Green, which is still there now. Different ownership, but still great. Still some of the best sounding rooms in London.
And just tell people who's recorded there.
Well, the studio itself at that point was owned by World Circuit, which is a label that did the Buena Vista Social Club and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't recorded there; it was mixed there. But in the studio itself, Bjork, the Smiths have done stuff there. REM did a record there. One of the main engineers there tells a great story about taking REM out to Wood Green for kebabs. I just like the idea of walking past Crystal in Wood Green and seeing Michael Stipe with a nice Donna.
The other one was Porcupine Tree did an album there, didn't they?
Did they? I can't remember. I'm sure they did.
Porcupine Tree did Fear of the Black Planet there, I think.
Let's not forget Yaz, The Only Way Is Up.
Was that recorded there?
That was recorded there.
It's a great studio. And,
it's amazing, yeah.
And we recorded part of Euphoric there as well, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We managed to use it again. We recorded the On VHS EP in Studio 2 there as well.
Yes, and the Magic Numbers recorded their stuff there as well, didn't they?
They did a lot of stuff there, yeah. But it's a great studio. It's the idea was, if you can envisage this, is that the Livingston is a big enough studio that it has separate rooms. So you have a drum room, a piano room, a vocal booth, a main area, and so we could actually play live but have complete separation on the recording. So most of what you hear on Morecambe is myself playing bass in the control room because I was operating the buttons.
Oh yeah, you're in the
looking through the window. Matt in the main room,
and I had the guitar stack set up, and I had a piano as well, didn't I?
You did. And then Stuart in the back room playing drums. So we all had line of sight. We could all see each other. And I know that we'd got the basic ideas on a lot of these songs and the melodies. But again, similar to part one, we were trying to really, I think at that time we thought that was going to be our thing. So I remember from the control room, myself or yourself or any of us was really sort of giving each other little signals and semaphore as to where the song was going to go and build-ups and going down. I remember part two.
Yeah, because on the remastered version of the album, there's different versions of part two, isn't there?
Mm.
But did you edit that in the studio afterwards and make it and structure any of that, or was that actually how we played it?
I'm trying to think back, and as far as I remember, none of the tracks are edited. This is how they were. I mean, if anybody's got the remastered version, there's actually some different takes of the tracks on there. I know there's a different take of Land Crab and part two as well. Again, similar, but not the same. But what we tended to do, and I remember this relatively clearly, is that we'd play through, and as the recordings went on, we'd say, okay, that bit was working. Let's that's a section. And then we'd basically be doing the arranging as we went along. And so each progressive take would be more and more formed. I know that definitely happened with Flint, and it definitely happened with part two as well. A lot of the time it was Stuart coming up with rhythmic ideas and using those to sort of arrange into a sequence.
Stu was really on form for that session, wasn't he? Because his drumming on Flint's one of the best things he's ever done, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, it's amazing.
I love the drumming on that. And I think I think we're really sort of rediscovering playing together again. So there's a lot of stuff that we'd done over the course of the preceding sort of 15 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So jamming together, it all sort of came back, didn't it? So
it did,
a lot of those sort of jam.
I think a lot of it was just the shock of part one.
That had gone so well.
Yeah, they'd gone so well.
I mean, I really like Morecambe. I think Morecambe sounds better than part one. But in some ways, I'm not sure I don't think it's got the shock of the new that part one had, to me. But I think there's some really great songs on it. I mean, out of all the albums we've done, I'd be happy to perform the whole album. I'd love to do it. I'd love to do play the whole of Morecambe show one day. Not that we ever get time to do it, I would imagine. But it's one of them things. Did we do gigs for this before On VHS came out?
No, I don't think we did. I think On VHS was actually the first kind of proper shows. I'm trying to remember, Matt. I honestly can't fully remember, but I don't ever remember doing a gig where we didn't play 6666, and that was on VHS EP. And I can't ever remember playing a gig that we didn't do that. I could be wrong. If anybody out there has a better memory than us.
Well, I remember the first gig we did was in that little pub in the library, wasn't it? I remember doing the library, and I remember doing.
So we just clarified the library in Highbury is a pub,
and we did the library. We did that ice cream shop in the ice cream place in 2000. That was the same year the album came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I'm sure we did 666 of those. But this must be fascinating for everybody listening.
Two old men who can't remember their own band. Do you remember a band we used to? I don't remember. Does anyone remember? Oh, I don't know.
This is fruitless. Let's go through the tracks. So, if anybody wants to follow along with us on the album, so there's Flint. Yeah, and as you say, we had that idea of this wall of sound. I really, we all like the idea of this kind of evolving wall of sound, and we had no interest in trying to commercialize or make it poppy or any of these kind of things. So I think the intro to Flint lasts about almost 2 minutes, and it is literally just a wall of noise fading in.
Yeah, and I remember a guy reviewed it and said this is not a nice start to an album. That's like, we just didn't care. We just, literally it was like at the time there was we didn't know if anyone was going to buy it or listen to it, and to be honest, we just didn't care. Just literally doing what we wanted. I think that attitude of just doing things that we love doing is kind of because we don't make any money out of it. So it's a basically uncommercial venture, because everything we basically lose money every time we do so, or sort of break even. Is that we can do what we like, and and so. If you want to do a song with 2 minutes of noise at the start of it, we can do it. And to be quite frank, this guy reviewed it and absolutely hated it. But Morecambe got some quite good reviews actually, and
it did. Going back to Flint, so Flint was the riff, the bass riff. I very distinctly remember I was very into Tortoise at that point, and again we spoke about this before. We were very, very much into DJ Shadow. Tortoise, DJ Shadow, Boards of Canada, all these kind of things as well. So the idea of like these repetitive kind of riffs and then building different sections on top of that was kind of the ideology behind it. Just to sort of see if we could reproduce these kind of sounds and, well, not even sounds, but the idea of those arrangements. And then you came up, Matt, with that melody over the top.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that as well. I don't actually know where that came. It's one of them things. I wish I'd known how'd you do that. You know what I mean? But that's the real sort of Hillagey Osricsy sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then Stu just came straight in with that krautrocky kind of repetitive beat, and it all just kind of came together as we developed playing different takes. Stuart came up with the section that goes into the toms, with the section where the bass goes distorted. Actually, there's an overdub I did at home there, which
you played guitar on it, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a little guitar synth part that we Steve now plays live, yeah. But yeah, that sort of like really came together very, very quickly. I can't remember the order we recorded these in. It's not the order that it was on the album, but after Flint came part 2. That all came from you. You'd got that pretty much set up.
I had the chord sequence and I had the melody, and basically learnt that. Yeah, the Weight was one that I had for a solo record, and I think I'd been doing it as a loop thing, because it's the sort of thing you can do as a loop thing, isn't it? So I think I've done it as a loop.
Yeah.
HR, the chords, which was basically, there's on every Mad Vision Orchestra record, there's a song that goes up and goes up, goes up, and I think Magma do it as well. So it was I remember Steve Davis saying it was like a Magma sort of thing. Do you remember? Because bizarrely, this was the album where. Do you want to tell the Steve Davis buys the album story, Kev?
This was the album that Steve Davis bought.
So we sold it all mail order ourselves. I remember signing copies on the top of Kev's car, and we were sending it off, and there's this bloke Steve Davis in Essex. And I thought, oh, that's like the snooker player Steve Davis. That's weird, isn't it? And then it turned out he was Steve Davis, and we went on his radio show. And Steve's a really good guy, and it was bizarre old time, but a very nice man. Knows his music. Really cool dude.
Very much so. Anyway. HR again. See, all of these. It was very much like we have this, and then it was a case of arranging all the dynamics and stuff in the studio, wasn't it? Again, I think Stuart led a lot of that on this one, and then it kind of went full Robert Fripp guitar at the end. Yeah. It's that whole tone scale solo, isn't it? Whereas as a bit of a Fripp nerd, I was at the time. I'm less so now, but there's various different formulas you use to make songs. There's a overlapping time signature thing. There's a whole tone scale thing. That's how you get red and things like that. And that was kind of doing that. That sort of. There's a solo album we did called. What's that solo album we did that's really good? That Fripp did?
Yeah, the Fripp solo album with Nevada Michael Walden on it.
I don't know. Is it Fripp Does It Again? Is it the Return of Fripp?
The Revenge of Fripp.
Of Fripp.
But anyway, it's got that. There's some really brilliant solo on it. Absolutely brutal solo on it. I love it when he does that sort of sheets of noise thing. There's a guy called Sonny Sharrock who does it as well. This sort of sheets of noise solo, and it's like. And Fripp's the master of that. And what's that Grinder Man track as well?
Oh yeah, I can't remember the name, but he's on that as well, isn't he?
I love it when he plays like that. That's HR.
Hotel Number 6.
That's my one, isn't it?
No, that's not your one. No, yes it is. Sorry,
Hotel Number 6 is me. What I did, I got a delay pedal. And I put a very short loop on the L4 delay pedal.
That's it, yeah.
And faded different guitar loops in, and then we overdubbed multiple versions of it, didn't we?
We did, and the strange rain-like noise is me tapping my fingers on a metal tray. Which was added. In fact, actually, the reason it's called. We should say something about why they're called these things as well. Actually, but Hotel Number 6 was. For reasons I won't go into, at that point I was travelling around Europe quite a lot. I was a spy. I'm not a spy. I wasn't a spy at all. I was mixing a lot of this stuff in hotel rooms, or at least getting it into some kind of order and choosing the takes and things. And Hotel Number 6 was the 6th hotel I'd stayed in on that particular run. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been in Norway, I think. And that's why that track's called Hotel Number 6, because I think that's actually where I recorded myself banging the tea tray just through the laptop microphone, I believe it was.
Ah, I see. I didn't know that.
But again,
I've learned something.
But again, it was just we kind of didn't restrict ourselves, did we? There wasn't anything where we just did whatever we wanted. So we very much liked. I think as well, when people think of electronic music, they very much think of dance music and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of the electronic music we were listening to had a lot of. I don't want to call them interludes. I don't want to sort of degrade things to call them interludes, but they had a lot of these little ambient sections, or sections, or really little even the Aphex stuff would have very, very short pieces. And I really like the idea of just having these little strange vignettes of noise.
And there's that on Kid A. There's that really good one that Ed O'Brien does with his loop pedals, and there's another one on Eno Fripp's albums and Board to Canada, and we always love all that sort of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
More about sonic textures than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Land Crab. Now here's an interesting one. We wrote that entirely in the studio, and if I remember rightly, from the point of somebody going, let's do a really fast, punky, hardcore-y song, to it being done was about 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, it was Black Flag and Bad Brains, wasn't it? So yeah, a real sort of American hardcore sort of thing.
We wanted something that was going to be, completely different to the vibe on like part 2 or something like that. So I think we even just made up the riff on the spot. We did, and again, it was had several kind of takes.
Well, the riff on it is very similar to when we used to play in a band in the 90s. A band we used to be in like when we were kids and stuff. So it's got that real sort of quite like an American sort of punk sort of song. But so it's got that sort of feel to it. Yeah, but it's very similar to a song we used to play years ago, basically.
Yeah, and Stuart very much started in hardcore bands, so to him, he setting the tempo and just getting on with it. It was a very comfortable zone for him. So that came together really, really quickly. And the reason it's called Land Crab is because myself and Matt were in. It was supposed to be a thrash band, wasn't it, Matt? But I suppose really looking back, it was more some kind of like avant-garde noise experiment. I mean, at the minute, we were 14. We thought it sounded like Metallic. Incompetent rock. It was. It's just it was probably in another 10 years it will come out as being some like legend. But if only we meant to do it. But rubbish. No, we were rubbish. And the very first band name we ever had, which I think was made by our bass player at the time, a lovely man called Justin, and he came up with the name Land Crab, which I think actually came from another one of our friends called Elliot through Justin. But Land Crab, I think, was the nickname for a Wolseley 6 motor car from like the 70s or something. I don't know. I do not know. It's a very abstract sort of thing.
I can't remember, but it was something like that. It's very, very Winchell just, yeah. So that's kind of that was like a little punk one. Daddy's Little Helper.
Now, here's an interesting one because
that's Dan, is it? And didn't you borrow Dan's? Did you borrow Dan's bass, or did you have your own bass?
I don't know if anybody remembers from our last podcast. We talked about a friend of ours, Dan, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And I was still using the bass that he lent us, which is a very nice 70s Precision. When we recorded this, Dan was still with us, and unfortunately he passed away in the time it took us to get it mixed and everything. And he was a filmmaker, and he made a short film, which I believe is actually still online somewhere, called Daddy's Little Helper. And that's why we called it that. It was just a little nod to our friend Dan. But the track itself, again, we'd got the chord sequence, I believe, and the bass riff, and we kind of put it all together. And I was actually doing another session with a very, very talented man called Terry Edwards. Now, Terry Edwards is...
Oh, yeah.
Is he specialises in brass, trumpets, saxophones, that kind of thing. And I mean, he's played with everybody. He started off in a band called the Higsons with Charlie Higson, funny enough. Very sort of post-punky thing in the 80s. And then since then, he's been a session guy. He does his own things as well. He's got a band at the minute called the Near Jazz Experience with, is it Mark Bedford from Madness? And Simon Charterton on drums. And yeah, I mean, Terry's played with everybody. Terry's played with...
he's probably... A lot of people know him for PJ Harvey, don't they?
Yeah, PJ Harvey. The last tour, he was on tour with PJ Harvey. He's on her last album. I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to try and say. He's played with so many different people. Go online, look up Terry Edwards, and just look at his credit list. He's amazing. And I was very lucky to be working with him. And he's actually a very nice man, and I consider him a friend. And yeah, whilst he was there, I kind of played him some of the stuff and said, do you want to do some stuff on this? And he was more than happy to. So we managed to get him to overdub over some of the sections, because I think this song, we hadn't quite got it together. So we'd got the sections, and I know the guitar we had Korg make this thing called a Chaos Pad.
Oh yeah, and we put the guitar through that,
Matt's
didn't we?
guitar again talking about like the DJ Shadow, the electronic thing. Matt, you're just playing that one chord, aren't you?
Yeah, and then it's a cut with like a glitchy sort of effect.
Yeah, so again, it's a very Johnny Greenwood, Tom Yorkie kind of thing. We were into all that kind of stuff. And I really like the idea of the live manipulation of sounds. So that guitar that Matt's playing there is Matt playing the chord, and then I think it was me just wiggling my finger around on this pad that cut the sound up and played it backwards, and that was all played live. We kind of worked on the arrangement. I don't think it was ever quite full, because I think it kind of just the first section kind of repeated round. But luckily, we got Mr. Terry Edwards to come in and do his thing on the second half of the track. And also at the end section is that was really interesting, because that was you, Matt, again playing that chord or making different.
Oh yeah.
You'd gone full Fred Frith on the guitar, and then I can't remember if it was yourself or myself, or whether you doing it or myself, but we had the line 6 delay pedal. Yeah, and just messing around with that, weren't we?
Yeah.
It's up and change really remember. That was done live. That was done as you played. And then Terry came in afterwards, and Terry, being the amazing musician he was, he just went in and did like this avant-garde call and response to Matt's, crazy guitar.
I have to say, Terry's one of the most remarkable musicians I've ever played with. He's phenomenal, isn't he?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. I mean, we always said the end of that track is like our it's the avant-garde Freebird. It's like this the solo section, the dueling soloist.
We should do that again, shouldn't we? Should do that song. We've been talking about it for years, haven't we?
We should work out how to do it. Yeah, we will come on to that later, actually, because that was a thing. Once we'd finished doing the record, we kind of sat down and went, right, how do we play this then?
Yeah, we should do that. Okay.
Now the next trap.
This is yours, isn't it?
Yeah, Woodchip. Now, do we tell the truth or do we lie about this?
Just tell the truth. I don't think I'm on this.
Woodchip is myself playing a guitar through a filter pedal. It's not synths, it's a guitar going through synth pedals. And if I remember rightly, the album wasn't quite long enough.
Oh yeah, we needed an extra track.
In the studio, we went, should we just make some noises for a couple of minutes? And there you go. That was that.
I remember now, yeah. Because I have to say, I know I'm not on it. So it's one of those ones where I think like Hotel Number 6, you're not on, apart from your thwacking. And and Woodchip, I'm not on that. I don't think.
That's right. Yeah. Woodchip was, I guess some would, at the time it was just something to kind of do. But again, it was that thing of like, it doesn't matter. We can do whatever we want. So it was a filter pedal with a guitar going through tons of delays and it was just great fun.
I like it. It's cool. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm glad it went on there because it's cool.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have put anything on if it was, if we didn't like it. And it was just these things that it was just very freeing to have this kind of to be able to make decisions on the fly, to just say, let's do this.
What's that? 10 by 10. Now, 10 by 10, you had the bass riff, yeah, as I remember. Yeah. And then I had that melody, and I really like the da-da-da-da.
Yes.
And the melody comes from Miles Davis, because Miles Davis has got this thing about playing sixths. And there's a all blues. It's got it's like a boosty sort of thing as well. So that's where that melody came from. And then we had those jangly Johnny Marr guitar parts.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's probably the whole track, isn't it? That's everything.
Well, yeah. Again, and it was just a case of just doing different takes of it and working out, Stuart working out the dynamics of where he was going with it. The like the rave section, where there's like, it sounds like a synth comes in, but again, it's actually Matt's guitar distorted going through a sequenced gate. If anybody knows what a sequenced gate is, it's basically it's a computer program that cuts the sound on and off in a certain pattern. So that is actually Matt's guitar part, but going through a gate to make that kind of little pattern there.
And when we play that song live, I don't play guitar on it at all. Steve plays all the guitar parts, and I play synthesizer on it.
Yes, that's right. Well, again, it was going back to what we were saying before.
Because originally, that's how we would have done it, probably.
Yeah, it took us ages to work out how to present some of these songs live.
And then also when we did the gigs for this, we had the on VHS EP, and also we played really short sets. We used to play half an hour to 40 minutes, didn't we? Because we were always the support band, so we'd be supporting Knife World or something like that. So, or I can't remember who I used to play with it them days, but there was always some Spanish Ramones covers band or something normally.
Yeah, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
we at that point, we used to play like to 6 people in London pubs. We play like, there used to be a scene of like Shoreditch type venues. But anyway, 10 by 10.
You digress. So
Fox, Andy Fox.
Andy Fox is next. Andy Fox. Now, again, Andy Fox. I seem to remember at the time I was listening to Earth, and I really liked the idea of doing something really slow. It was just a bass line, and then you put the melody on.
I have to say, I was thinking of Portishead. Portishead's third album, which I absolutely love. I love everything Portishead ever done. But the third album's particularly, there's some slow material on there that's just just ridiculous. They're such a good band, and they're one of my favourite bands, Portishead. So that's Andy Fox that comes from that for me as well.
And I think we really just sort of let it do its thing. It's and again we were very lucky that Terry Edwards came in and played on it for us. And in fact, actually, so you saying about Miles Davis earlier, I remember when we were recording Terry, and I just said to him, Miles Davis, and hence and when the saxophone first comes in, you get those really long, drawn out notes.
It's
just really, eerie and
in a silent way.
There's a really, really beautiful piano at what was, I don't know if it's still there, at Livingston as well, and that just I think I played it with the sustain thing down. I think I did like that. I remember this is during a period of my life where I had quite a bad back injury, and I remember I was drinking coffee, taking pain medication, and drinking beer as well. And I was in a right old state when I was making. It was like Guns N' Roses, wasn't it?
No, I just had a bad back, and I was trying. It just hurt. It's just hurty. I had a hurty back. I wasn't like Guns N' Roses, but I have to say it's probably why I don't remember much about it, because I was I had a hurty back. I was more worried about my hurty back. So that's the whole album, and I really like this album. I think it's the second best one we've done. I think. I think it sounds really good. I think it sounds. Sounds a lot better than a lot of the stuff we've done. The room sounds good.
I think a lot of
good job in the production.
I think there's several reasons for sort of like the way it turned out. I think part of it is because it was what it was. We were very lucky to be able to use an amazing place to record drums, and it's just, the whole album. None of it's what you describe as busy. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of space in it to kind of put it together. Because I mean, once we'd got the recordings, I then went through, and I didn't rearrange anything. I know that for a fact in the sort of post production, but I know there was quite a few sort of we added effects on. Just manipulated some of the sounds a little bit further.
You did less on this one than you did on part one.
Yeah.
It was on part one you added that whole that synth bit in the middle, didn't you?
Yeah. On this I think there was a few little synths added. Obviously, whilst we were still in the studio, you Matt, you overdubbed a lot of the
piano live, wasn't it?
The piano, and also guitar lines and stuff. I mean, some of those parts, there's 3 or 4 guitars, Johnny marring away.
Yeah, I know the chimey bits, didn't I?
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk about foreign languages while we're here?
So we decided to release.
Good track, that.
We decided to release 10 by 10 as a single, and then we thought, why not? Let's just do a B side. And I remember this exactly. I asked Matt to just send me a chord progression, which you did. And then I put it into the computer. I processed it. The drums are an outtake from Andy Fox. when Stuart was still kind of improvising along to the track. And then I added that bass line to it. And then lots of other little weird, funny noises.
We've done that a few times. I've sent you a chord sequence and you've worked on it, haven't you? We've done that with a few things over the years.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun to do. And I don't ever want to think of us as, I guess over the years we've become more of a kind of a band. But I always like the idea that, we still do things that maybe surprise people or maybe aren't even possible to do live, but it's more about just creating something,
Bands should be ideas rather than being stuck in. You should be a way of doing things rather than just you do it like this and then it's like this, because then you just get the same album over and over again. And I think it's like with the next record we're working on at the moment. It's probably going to be a very different way of working, because we're kind of working in a way that a lot of modern bands do, where we're doing things at home rather than going to the studio. So, whereas this one, we're sort of jamming in the studio. Each record we've approached in quite a different way. And I think that's really good. And I think with the next one, it's going to be different again. So you have to keep trying different methods. You can't get the same results by repeating the same methods over and over again. You need to try new things all the time. Yeah, I think that's really important. So. But yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it? So after we finished making this,
I'll just say one other thing as well. Present in the studio with us whilst we were recording was Stephen Cleaton.
He was, he was just hanging out, wasn't he?
He was just hanging out with us, yeah. He made a lovely cup of tea, and we obviously, as we explained before, we knew Steve very well. We all from the same town, and then basically what happened was. And I remember this quite distinctly. We all was, swept along on this kind of wave of, this is going quite well, isn't it? This is fun to do. And I remember the album being reviewed in Prog magazine, and that was really Dom Lawson again doing that.
He got a half-page feature. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and Dom really understood what we were doing with it. I mean, all the references and stuff he was talking about. It was like, yes, that's it.
It's really
that's exactly what we're trying to do. And so we hired a rehearsal room. And we thought maybe we could do some gigs with this. And then we got into a rehearsal room and we tried to do them as a 3-piece. And then we realised this is impossible.
It was a nightmare, because I think what I was trying to do was I was trying to loop the guitars live and do all those sort of things. But
we could have only done it with things like
needed a click track,
backing tracks, and
also the technology in terms of Ableton wasn't there at the time. And also, we probably either need. I mean, it's kind of like the problem we've got now, is we're using more synths now. So we're, a lot of our songs have 2 guitars, a synthesizer, and some, lots of different. So we're probably at the point now where we might have to get a synthesizer player for live, or we're always something we've talked about for years. But with this record, it was like, well, we need to get another guitarist, and the most obvious person to get Steve, because Steve was our friend.
It wasn't a question, was it? It was just straight away. It was like, who do we like and who's capable?
There's 2 sort of things about being in bands as well. The most important thing is, would you want to kill the people you're in a band with? Can you handle being stuck in a van with them? Playing in bands is hard work. It's kind of like a relationship, and me and Kev and Stu have been doing it for a long time together, and we've learnt to get along without falling out. I mean, occasionally we fall out. It's very, very rare. And Steve's got a very easygoing personality most of the time as well. So he sort of came into it. And I think it was good for the 3 of us to have someone else come in who hadn't been in the band. Who wasn't. So we'd sort of been doing it since the 90s. So we'd kind of been there, seen it. But having Steve there when we were doing the gigs, it kind of made it fresh again, because he hadn't seen it all before. It was his first time being on stage in a band, and everything for Steve was a new discovery. And so the initial couple of years of the band, 2 or 3 years actually, up until about 2015, we were doing a lot of those gigs where there's hardly anyone there. We weren't really touring. We were
trying to, I think as well, we were trying to replicate the records. Even tracks like Flint, we didn't actually really work out how to play them live properly for quite a few years. I mean, Andy Fox, we stopped playing for a long time, and then it's only been in like the last 3 years that we started playing again. In fact, I think the best version we've ever done with it, unfortunately minus Terry Edwards, but it does have one of my favourite solos you've ever done, Matt, on it, is the version we did in America on the Live USA 17 album. That kind of really sums up what we're doing with it now,
that version's really good. I think because one of the things as well, we had all the pedals to do all these sort of things properly as well. Because we had the Eventide, which you can do a lot of those, like those glitchy sort of sounds. The Eventide H9 pedal is, hey nerds, pedal nerds. The Eventide H9 pedal, you can use all that glitchy stuff, all those harmonies. There's so many things that pedal can do, and I don't even really use it to its maximum potential, but there's sounds on there that are just incredible. Well, if you listen to the live version of Andy Fox, that's all a big reverb off the H9, and having that pedal there meant I didn't have to build the loops up live. I could just basically hit a couple of notes and the reverb does the rest for you. So having the H9 was a big deal for me.
In fact, actually, America was one of the reasons we actually resurrected a lot of these tracks to play live because quite simply, as Matt said, I think the longest... Yeah, because the longest I think we'd ever played for up until then was about 45 minutes because we tended to be a support band or, and then all of a sudden the wonderful George Roldan invited us to come play at Rosfest in America. And it was like, okay, no problem. How long's the set? Hour and a halk. So at that point, Euphoric was an hour. We'd only written 2 or 3 tracks from Euphoric. So it was a case of, right, okay, I guess we'll have to play everything then. So, that's when we kind of really worked on Andy Fox. How do we play it live? And I think as well, because we progressed as a band, we kind of got away from, okay, let's stop trying to make it like it sounds on the record. Let's just do what works live. So, so even the weight, we brought the weight back for Rosfest as well.
I love the weight, but Steve doesn't like playing it. I think it freaks Steve out.
It's very clean. It's very clean.
There's no room for it. I really like playing the weight. That's one of my favourite songs. But I'd like to play it again, actually. I'd like to keep playing it.
Yeah. And 10 by 10 we've brought back recently, which was simply down to getting synths involved in the band, as you said earlier, Matt. And all of a sudden, moving, migrating one of, Matt's guitar part onto a synth, all of a sudden just gave it, it's like, now it makes sense. Now it feels right, because I think there was quite a lot of, post-production, effects that we did on this album that kind of, as you say, the technology wasn't even there. So trying to replicate it live, it's like, well, okay, we can't do exactly that. What can we do instead of? And it just kind of took ages for us to get our heads around it.
When we made that album, I think I had the Metal Muff. I think the Metal Muff Fuzz and the DL4. I think that was the only 2 effects I had. And I had my Telecaster and my Fender transistor amp that broke halfway through the recording of the album, I think.
The Champ,
The Champ, and it's never been fixed, and I've never got around to it. I will do one day, but I've just never got around to the bloody thing.
We had the Mighty Red Bear as well, which we still have now.
I love that amp. I love
that. So
amp.
it's the Red Bear, for those of you who don't know, is fascinating. I think is an amp that I brought in Denmark Street in like the late 90s. And what it is, it's I think it was originally made by Sovtech, and is mine a 60 watt? I think it's a 60 watt head, and it was Russian made. Now on the back of it is very confusing because it says on license through Gibson, but Gibson don't have really any record of them, and I've done quite a bit of research on it. And basically, what it was a lot of old military factories in Russia repurposed the ones that were making tubes and stuff. So they started making things like amps. So that's what the Red Bear is. It's a Russian amplifier. It has this interesting function, is that it's basically a clone of a JCM 800, Marshall JCM 800. And what they did is they massively increased the bass capabilities of the amp, with the idea, because tubes, for anybody that's doesn't know or is even vaguely interested, to get tubes to sound nice and big and and warm, you have to turn up the volume quite a lot to get them to really hot. If you turn tubes down, they can get a little bit thin sounding. And the idea on this amp was that you could turn it down to a decent, a listenable volume, but then crank the bass up so that you've got full sound.
Did I have a stack? Didn't I run 2 guitar amps on that?
Yeah, we had both. We had the Champ and the
Red Bear.
Bear running at the same time. Yeah. because I was into fancy
Fender
things
Princeton, not Fender Princeton, not the Champ.
Fender Princeton, yeah, not Fender Champ.
Yeah, the transistor, because I think it was the same model that they used on OK Computer. It's the OK Computer amp. I think that's why. Yeah, the Princeton is the OK Computer clean sound amp. And I love that amp. I need to get it. I must get that. It's in the corner over there, and I forgot all about it. To be honest, so I must get it fixed. It's in the pile of techno pile. Yeah, with the my prized collection of 500 power adapters that I don't know anything for. I need them. But they'll come in handy for something.
Yeah. But the thing with the Red Berries is that if you ignore all of that kind of the idea of it to be able to play it quiet, if you still crank it up, then it's just really, really bassy. I mean, normally you can't turn the bass frequencies on it up past like two or three before it starts getting ridiculous. So it's just quite big sounding, which is something we actually explored a bit further on later albums. But I think on this album we were still sort of like very much into like clean sounds and things like that, weren't we?
Well, I remember at the time I went through a stage of not being into distorted guitar at all.
Yeah.
Used to be really delay.
Phase, wasn't it?
And then I got really back into. I think I got around the time of Spooky. Into the next album when we got to the EP. Clayton was there, and he was a bad influence. Can't
blame him.
I can. He came in, and Steve's really into stoner rock and Queen to the Stone Age and that sort of stuff. Caius he really likes, and who else, Kev?
He's a massive Smashing Pumpkins fan.
Smashing Pumpkins,
yeah. He's very much he very much. I think less so like he's a big stoner rock fan. More that he's a fan of the fuzz.
Yeah, he likes that guitar sound, doesn't he? Not that he's into the stoner rock, but he's into that fuzz guitar sound, and also he's into Aphex Twin, and so he's got two parallel sort of interests, Steve, which is sort of Smashing Pumpkins and Aphex Twin, isn't it?
Mm. Exactly.
The two areas of Clayton interest. He loves Radiohead as well. So when he came in, I think things got a little bit heavier, and also I think we didn't realise what a good guitarist he was, because he's a really good guitar player. He's a really musical guitar player, Steve.
He's very inventive.
Steve's a natural musician. I'm not. I'm somebody who's had to force himself to learn to play an instrument to the point where I could do it. So I had to practice and practice and practice. Where Steve's got amazing ears, and Steve can do things like Steve can come up with if he comes up with parts, he'll spend a long time coming up with them, but they'll be really good. Yeah. The best guitar part on any Fierce and Difficult is the one he came up with at the end of the Magnet. There's a guitar part that's really, really good at the end of that, and I would never have come up because he's I will shoehorn things in, and he's a much more natural musician. He's by birth he's a fantastic musician, whereas I don't have that.
In conclusion, Steve's great.
Steve is great. Yeah, well, Steve's. I think if Steve hadn't have come in, I don't think we'd have done half the things we've done, because Steve, I think it was almost like having when the four of us together, there's a chemistry that's not there when the three of us play together. Yeah. Now, I love jamming with Steve. The three of us. I love jamming, but the what became the band isn't there without Steve, and it's a really weird thing. It's a very strong. Bands are funny old things, aren't they?
Which I think is going to actually lead us on to, which I think will be our next podcast, which is we'll talk about On VHS, the next EP. Which, going on from what Matt said there, the On VHS EP in a very favourable review was described as four men in a room playing riffs. We kind of sidestepped. We went from this slightly arty.
Experiment. There's definitely a post-rock. I remember when this album came out, it was very much we were okay. You're a post-rock band now, and which was fine. But I remember a guy reviewed it and compared us to all these post-rock bands, and I did like Explosions in the Sky. You can hear about that in The Weight. There's definitely a bit of that in there, but we were never. There was a lot they compared to a lot. So we basically ripped off various sort of post-rock.
I remember. And I literally ripped off. And I ripped off a lot of bands that I'd never heard of.
Yeah, and I literally had to Google them and say, well, I don't think we ripped them off. I've never heard them before. But if you'd said King Crimson and the Smiths and Mahavishnu Orchestra, and that's where I was and then with Tortoise and DJ Shadow, that's kind of where we were coming from, and then sort of Goblin or Can and people like that. There was all those sort of things in there, but there wasn't contemporary post rock. And we found ourselves briefly sort of playing like post rocky sort of gigs, and post rock gigs are fine, but there's an element of, it's like a lot of music scenes really, but when you get to go to see a lot of post rock, it's a bit like 70s boogie rock in that a lot of it sounds quite similar. There's a certain formula to post rock where they have these big atmospheric build-ups, and there's this certain sort of guitar sounds and stuff, and after a while you just sort of think, well, this is, and it does become very generic, and it becomes there's a certain post rock cliche thing, and at the time there was a lot of that about, weren't there?
Yes, there was a lot.
I'm not saying it's awful, and I'm saying that I actually really like a lot of it, but I think people presumed, oh, you're instrumental and you got a beard, right? Post rock. But the first album came out, and it's prog rock. The second album came out, post rock. We're still sitting there going, we're just jamming, just messing about, literally just messing about. We're just having fun doing this. Oh yeah, you and your post rock ways. No, sorry, mate. I'm just literally trying to make some records with my mates. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care what anyone calls us. You know what I mean? Then the next record came out as Cardiacs. Bill Cardiacs, and you, oh, you're a Cardiacs fan, Cardiacs obsessive, and once again, I like Cardiacs, but I've not heard a lot. When the next EP came out, it was all Cardiacs. So, each thing we've done, people sort of say with this and with that, and like the last album we did, it was Stoner Rock. I see you, Stoner Rock, and it's just like, well, what we do is you make records on the basis of the things that make all of us happy when we're recording them. There's no formula there. We finished the record. It came out. It got quite good reviews. People seemed to like it even more than the first album. Didn't have quite the same mystique as the first EP. I think people went a bit sort of, the first EP people got really excited about. The second one came out. The album came out. It got quite good reviews and people were into it. We got Steve in on guitar, and then we went on to on VHS. Is that right, Kev?
That is right, which is as I said, I think we'll move on to next time. So hopefully people will start to sort of get an idea that the path for us from like part one to what we are now, it was quite long. It was never arduous, and it's constantly changing. It was never started as this is what we are. There was no sword in the sand. We weren't making a standpoint on anything really, and I think that's hopefully been to our benefits. That every album's kind of sounded different, for better or for worse, and I think that the progression to the On VHS EP was quite a significant one, because that's when we suddenly started writing again in a rehearsal room, the way we kind of always used to have done it. Up until now, everything was kind of made up as we went along, going around people's houses, coming up with bits, sending things to each other. It was never really thought of as like, right, okay, this is a band now.
That's kind of what we're going back to now, isn't it? Mm. Anyway, we'll talk about it the next time.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Looking back on it, all I would say is I think Morecambe is one of our best sounding albums. Mm-hmm. It's got some of my favourite Fierce and Dead songs, and I had a really good time recording it, and I really like playing those songs. And the weird thing is, nearly 10 years later, I find myself recreating the parts I improvised in 2 days in 10 years. And we never ever thought that we'd be playing in America and Germany and, on tour with Hawkwind. And the things that happened to us after that was so beyond the realms of our expectations. And we, the things that we could never thought possible, literally never thought possible. So I'm really glad we made the album, and I'm really, really proud of it still. And, good times. Yeah,
good times, man. Good times. Right, so there we go. Well, I hope everybody's keeping safe. I hope everybody's mildly amused by our ramblings. We're going to keep doing it. Hopefully we'll get better at it.
We haven't got anything else to do.
Exactly.
All right, we're done.
So we'll say goodbye, and we'll speak next time.
Bye.